We are filming in New York City for the Hamilton College Jazz Archive, and I am very pleased to have one of the most respected jazz pianists in music, Mr. Ray Bryant. Thank you for joining me.
It's my pleasure to be here.
I would like to read a little quote that was written about you from the All Music Guide to Jazz. The fellow said, "Although he could always play bop, Ray Bryant combines older elements including blues, boogie-woogie, gospel, and stride into a distinctive, soulful, and swinging style. No one plays After Hours quite like him." Nice comment, huh?
Yeah, it's nice, especially since After Hours is one of my favorite tunes.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the first piano selections that I actually learned. You know, I learned it from the original recording by Erskine Hawkins, featuring Avery Parrish at the piano. I mean, it's a composition of Mr. Parrish, and like I said, it's one of the first tunes that I learned, and I've been playing it all my life, and I still enjoy playing it. And
Can you tell me how you learned it? Did you learn it from listening to the recording, or did you get sheet music to it, or was it a
no, I learned it just from listening to the recording.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you were listening to a large ensemble and bringing it down to the piano.
Well, the piano was featured in the orchestra. You know, it was a featured piano thing. Actually, it was like a trio recording right up until the very end of the tune. Then the band comes in on the last chorus and plays a little riff, you know, behind the piano. And so it's basically a piano recording.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Within the band, the Erskine Hawkins orchestra. I really love this tune, and I finally, all my life, it was like a dream of mine to play this song with Erskine Hawkins, because you know, I made a recording of it with Dizzy Gillespie and Sonny Stitt and Sonny Rollins back around 1958, and the recording has got to be pretty popular. A lot of people even accuse me of playing it better than Avery Parrish, which I never believed, you know, never, not for a minute, you know. So anyway, I was on a boat cruise, on a jazz cruise once, and Erskine Hawkins' band was on the cruise also. And I met Mr. Hawkins, and I just came out and asked him. I said, "Mr. Hawkins, I learned After Hours." You know, he knew who I was. You know, he knew that I wasn't just anybody. He knew that I could play. I said, "Can I come in and play this tune with the band one night?" He said, "Sure. Come by tonight around 10 o'clock and let me know you're there, and we're on." I did it, and I played it with the orchestra. You know, I knew the whole arrangement and everything. You know, so it was beautiful. One of the dreams of my life came true.
What a thrill. You came from a pretty musical city, Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, yeah.
A lot of great musicians, including yourself, came out of there.
A lot of guys, yeah. The Heath brothers, you know, Jimmy, Percy, Albert Tootie, Lee Morgan, Bobby Timmons, Benny Golson. Benny and I sort of grew up together, you know. And let's see, McCoy Tyner, John Coltrane. You know, it's just full of great musicians.
Is there anything that distinguishes a musician from Philadelphia, do you think?
I don't think so. You know, people say that, you know, they talk about, at least not anymore. Maybe at one time the music could be like sort of like regional, you know, maybe, but now everything is so intertwined and is so easily gotten together, you know. The world's gotten smaller, and there's no more Philadelphia sound or anything like that, you know. It's said, and maybe it's true, that a lot of piano players come from Pittsburgh, you know, and like that, you know, and a lot of piano players come from Detroit. And a few come from Philadelphia, you know. But at one time, we thought that we could distinguish a sound, a certain sound, like as being from Philadelphia or Detroit, but not anymore, you know.
Yeah. Well, recordings are so prolific now that a young person can tap into music from anywhere,
right?
You know, and get his influences that way, I suppose. I understand your sister was a piano player also, piano teacher.
She is. She still is. She still teaches piano, and she's basically a gospel pianist. You know, about the best I ever heard. I've never heard anybody better than and her. But she's a teacher, and she's a piano teacher, and Kenny Barron was one of her first students. Yeah. I mean, she was Kenny's first piano teacher, and we all know how great a pianist Kenny Barron is. So my sister really churned one out there.
So you came from a musical atmosphere in your home. Did you hear your sister playing as a young boy and aspire to it?
Well, actually, my mother was the first. She was the main piano player there. You know, my mother, who was a gospel minister, she played the piano. She's the first one, and I was the first one to be sent to a formal piano teacher, and my sister started after I started. You know?
Oh.
So my mother was the one that I actually heard play, and she said that the reason she sent me to the piano teacher was that she used to play something on the piano, and then I would come along behind her and play something similar. You know, she said, "This guy's got a little talent or something." You know.
Yeah.
Said, maybe I better see what I can do with him. So she sent me to the piano teacher, and that's how I got started.
Right. Was it classical-oriented piano at that time?
Well, when I went to the piano teacher, it was a classical instruction.
Yeah.
You know, a really formal classical instruction, which I feel stood me in good stead, you know, for the other things that I would want to do later on.
Right.
There's nothing like having that classical foundation and background. You know, you really learn how to play the piano, and it just does you nothing but good.
Mm-hmm. Did you have opportunities to play in the church then, being that your mother was a minister?
Yeah, but I didn't do it too much. You know, I really didn't do it too much. I never, by any stretch of the imagination, consider myself a gospel piano player. I just do not. You know, there are influences, which people say there are influences there, and I'm sure that they are there. But that's about as far as it goes.
Mm-hmm. In listening to you play, especially on this most recent recording we'll talk about along the way, I'm very impressed by the chording, the power of your left hand. It seems to me that you really like kind of chords in the 2 octaves below middle C, like kind of low-sounding things, but they don't sound muddy the way you play them. Is that something that you consider part of your style, or is it just my imagination?
So. I guess it would be a part of my style, yeah. It's just, I like to use the whole piano, but I try not to let one hand muddy up and, you know, and destroy the other hand or something like that. So you try to get a balance in there. And I figure that a piano is an instrument that you should be able to play alone. So, like I said, and the classical training helped, you know, in what I wanted to do with my left hand, you know, as opposed to the right hand and so forth like that, you know. And I guess it sort of evolved into some sort of a sound that was in my head that I had to get out of the piano. And through a trial and error and so forth like that, the style evolved.
Who were some of the first, you mentioned Avery Parrish, of course, and Erskine Hawkins. Were there other people that caught your ear as a young man that directed you to jazz?
Who were my main influences? I mean, pianistically, as far as I'm concerned, or I should say, who did I listen to? Who did I really like listening to was, number one would be Art Tatum and Teddy Wilson, and then with the advent of the bebop era, of course, Bud Powell. And I think maybe a couple horn players influenced my style too, you know, like the linear things that I do. I think about Charlie Parker, you know, with whom I had the great honor and privilege of playing with a couple times.
Yeah.
You know?
Let's talk about that. You became the house pianist at Blue Note
In Philadelphia.
in Philadelphia.
Yes.
And you were in your early 20s.
Right.
Was this a gig that was something that was a pretty good gig to grab?
Well, at that time, I guess so. You know, wasn't much money to be made, anything like that. But as far as meeting people whom I had heard only on records, it was just great, and getting a chance to work with them. You know, the Blue Note Club. Lots of guys came to play there without accompaniment. They came, you know, alone, and so it was up to the club to provide backup for them, the backup musicians. And I was lucky enough to be called in quite a few cases. You know, oh my God, I met. I can't even begin to say how many people I met as a result of being sort of like the Blue Note house trio or something like that. You know, Charlie Parker was one. You know. Sonny Stitt, Roy Eldridge, Charlie Shavers, Miles Davis. And as a result of the Miles meeting, I even ended up making a recording with him back in the 50s. Only one I ever did with Miles. But and who else? Oh, Ben Webster.
Coleman Hawkins, perhaps?
No. I didn't meet Hawk until
later.
Until I came to New York. And I got to play with them too, and to record with them 2 or 3 times because of a similar status that I enjoyed at Prestige Records. You know, a record date, they would call me for some time, you know, once in a while. And the dates with Coleman Hawkins were one of them. It was.
So, as the house pianist, if the manager said to you, okay, how much warning did you have? Or I wouldn't say warning. How much time did you have before you knew a particular guy was coming to play? And did you feel you had to do some homework somehow to research the tunes that you knew that they liked to play? Or did you just have enough knowledge at that time where you could go in?
Well, I think I had enough knowledge, you know, because I've, of course, listened to all their records, you know, every record that Charlie Parker made. And, you know, I listened to nothing but the jazz recordings coming out at the time, and so like when I went in to play with Charlie Parker, I knew all the tunes, and he would just call out the key and set the tempo, and we'd go.
And there you went.
Yeah.
Was he personable to work with?
Very personable.
Yeah.
Yes, Charlie was a nice guy. I know he liked me. You know, and we had a very good time together. As a matter of fact, we were going to record together because he said, on my next recording session, I want you guys. And he passed away.
Yeah. Who else was in that trio at that time?
Specs Wright, drummer from Philadelphia. Charles Specs Wright, and most of the time, Jimmy Rouser was the bass player. My brother Tommy played bass too, but he was doing other things at that time, you know.
Yeah.
So Jimmy Rouser was most of the time a part of the trio. Jimmy's still around New York here, he's still playing.
Yeah. Didn't your brother go on to play with a number of people, including the Ink Spots? And
yeah, he did things like that, yeah. And he's on quite a few of my recordings, of course, you know, the trio things, the early trio things, and he's on the thing with Dizzy and Sonny Stitt and Sonny Rollins. Things like that. And
a lot of musical genes in your family.
Charlie Shavers. And so,
yeah. Did it come to a point where you felt you needed to go to New York? What prompted the move to New York?
Oh yeah. I was in Philadelphia, and I had Carmen McRae came to town, and without a piano player, and I went and filled in with her. And when she left, I left with her. You know. I was with her for maybe 2 years, and I came back to Philadelphia, and then Joe Jones, you know, of Count Basie fame, Joe Jones, the drummer, he decided that he wanted to have a trio, and he called me, and I did that for a year, still based in Philadelphia. And then I got back from the thing with Joe Jones, and I said, I'm working only with people from New York, and I know that's where I want to be, so why shouldn't I go there? So I did.
And what year was that?
Around 59.
Okay. What was the jazz atmosphere in 59 at that time? 52nd Street kind of
had just about
come and gone.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, when I first came here, I did things like I would play in the afternoons at the Metropole, in the Metropole Cafe over on 7th Avenue with guys like Charlie Shavers, Coleman Hawkins, Roy Eldridge, other guys who were playing there.
Red, not Red Nichols.
No, trumpet player.
Red Rodney.
No,
No?
the guy, he's more or less from the Dixieland era or something like that. Red, I'll think of it.
Okay.
I know he's very,
So many guys.
yeah, but he was a very famous guy. You know, he had his own band there. I didn't play with him much, but the bands would alternate, you know.
Uh-huh.
And avant-gardists were doing pretty good at that time. I mean, at nighttime, I'd play downtown at the 5 Spot with the guys like Benny Golson, Curtis Fuller, like that. So I was very busy when I first came to New York. I already knew most of the people, you know, so there was no. It seems like when they found out that I was here, I got busier than I could really handle, you know.
Was there a waiting period to get into the musicians union at that time?
Yeah, there was. But I was already in by the time I got here, because when I was a member of the Joe Jones Trio, Joe saw that I gained membership status.
Uh-huh.
And I've been a member all these years. You know.
Right. Can I ask what the typical wages might have been like playing at the Metropole or the 5 Spot?
Well, nobody got rich, you know. I don't even remember, because I guess I didn't even worry about how much money I was making, you know. I guess I did not. I guess $125 a week maybe, or something like that, you know, somewhere in that area, you know. $125 a week.
Right.
Like that. But I was also busy doing recording sessions, and you know, and that added on to the overall monetary thing,
Yeah,
you know.
right.
Yeah.
The typical recording session at that time was they usually give you a couple days or a couple sessions in the studio to complete an album.
Yeah, or something like that, yeah.
It's like a 3-hour session or something, and then you had to.
Yeah.
Do you remember how that worked?
Yeah, maybe 3-hour sessions and maybe 2 days. You know.
Mhm.
If you needed an extra day, they try to have that set up too.
What was your arrangement with the record label as far as they pay you for the session, and was at the end of it, did you get money for albums sold?
Well, as far as a sideman, that was the end of it, yeah.
Right.
But if you were the leader and it was your recording session, then you were supposed to collect royalties. But some of the record companies, you didn't always collect royalties.
Yeah.
You know, you were contracted and you were supposed to collect royalties, you know. But I think most jazz musicians had problems with the recording companies back there, you know.
Yeah.
Guys just were not too honest. Hopefully it's changed a little bit now, but you know, back then it was the most you could hope for, from the most you could really rely upon from a recording session, was that your record would be out there and get played, and you might get some personal engagements from that, you know.
Right. It'd be very hard for a musician to keep track of how many records they were selling.
Right.
You know, so.
And most guys were not that, they weren't that business-wise, you know, to know how to check on it or things like that, you know. And record companies took advantage of it, you know, definite advantage of it. It was really disgraceful, in my estimation.
Yeah. Was there one record company that had a reputation as being good to work with, honest?
Well, I guess your best shot was to try to get with a big company, you know, but no record company was beyond doing certain you know things, you know.
Yeah.
But the best shot would be to get with a big company that, you know, that had some, you know.
when you started putting your own trios together, I'm wondering when you started writing your own tunes, has it been something you've been doing all along, or was it something that maybe when a record date opportunity came along that you wanted to then branch out and do your own?
Well, as far as writing my own tunes, that started long before I came to New York City and long before I got the recording contract on my own. You know, I wrote a few tunes that were recorded by other people. I wrote George Shearing recorded a few of my songs, you know, and Cal Jader made the first recording of my tune entitled the Cubano Chant, which is a pretty well-known tune by now, you know. But when I got my first recording contract, actually I made my first recording date under my own leadership, under my name, was in around 55, long before I left Philadelphia to come to New York.
Yeah.
I did a recording session for Epic Records in conjunction with Betty Carter,
Yeah.
singer. That was my first recording session and also her first, because we had the same manager, John Levy. He got us this recording date, and on that I recorded two of my original things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But this was long before I came to New York. Of course, after I came to New York and really tried to get a trio together, a working trio, which wasn't until around 1960. That's when we recorded Little Susie,
Mm-hmm.
things like that, and even the Madison Time, the dance song, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably hard to keep a working group together for a long stretch of time,
Yeah.
given the nature of the business.
Yes, yeah. It was pretty rough, yeah, but I did okay for a while there because of the records achieved a lot of public acclaim, you know, and got to be pretty popular. I guess they call them hit records or stuff like that. You know,
Uh-huh.
Little Susie really did very well. So I had a trio together for a while, you know. But then things changed, and I just sort of went out on the freelance thing, you know, like whatever I could do, you know. Of course, today I don't even try to keep a trio together because more and more I just do solo piano things. That's what I've been doing more and more, most lately.
Yeah.
Once in a while, if a trio's called for, such as this latest recording here, you know, I call the best guys that I know
Right.
and try to get them in there.
Yeah. I have to admit to overhearing part of a conversation last night after the concert that you were having, and all I heard was he said to this woman that you only play in New York a couple times a year.
Oh, yeah.
So other than that, you're like moving around.
Yeah,
traveling.
well, for a while, like back in the 80s, I played only in New York. You know, I had maybe 3 or 4 clubs that I just played like 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and I kept going and rotating, and it took up the whole year, you know. So I found that I wasn't getting a chance to go and play any place else. So I had to really just stop it, cut it out, and since then I've been, it's gotten down to the point now to where, like you said, I only play maybe 2 weeks a year in New York City.
Mhm.
The rest of the time I'm out of the country doing other things.
Yeah. I wanted to wind back to, you were talking about Little Susie. Did you have a sense when you recorded that tune that, you know, I think this tune's really going to do well for us? Or does it sometimes come as a real surprise that one particular thing hits and the others don't?
Well, I wasn't surprised at that because we had tried it out on so many audiences before making the record. I mean, I recorded it with the Joe Jones trio, you know, when I was with Joe. It hadn't really evolved to what it ended up being like when I did it under my own name in 1960, or the last part of '59.
Mm-hmm.
But having played in so many clubs and joints, you know, around and seeing the reaction of the people to this tune, I knew that if we ever got a chance to put it down on record, the way that it had evolved, the way it had evolved to being, it would probably do very well.
Mhm.
And that's the way it turned out.
Yeah. Interesting. Sonny Rollins, you've played with Betty Carter. Is it different playing behind singers than horn players?
Well, I always approached it the same way,
Mhm.
the same way. I would say to me, there's not too much of a difference, because I feel like whether I'm playing for a horn player or for a singer, my role is to support and, whenever I can, embellish,
Yeah.
So I do the same thing for a horn player that I would do for a singer in regards to that. So I don't see too much difference in playing for. I mean, some guys do it differently, but my approach would be the same for a singer as for a horn player.
Mhm.
If a horn player is playing a ballad, I do the same thing I would do. Basically, if a singer was singing this same ballad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I approach it. I approach them similarly.
Is it a problem sometimes, or a challenge, when you have to play perhaps the same tune, but if you're playing it with a vocalist, a tune you've played many times, all of a sudden it's in a new key?
Oh, that can it can be a problem, but it shouldn't be. I guess I'm fortunate. It's never been a big problem for me.
Yeah.
I can play almost anything that I play. I can play on almost any key.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any difference.
I should explain to our listeners eventually that I got to see you play last night with the Marian McPartland tribute, which was a wonderful event. And when Sweets Edison came out, and I think you did a couple numbers, and then you were going to do Centerpiece,
Yes.
and Marian was at the other piano, and I saw you do this to her,
Well,
and it was very deliberate that you were
Yeah.
showing her something.
yeah. Well,
Can you explain what that's about?
yeah. Let me explain. Marian was actually joking. She said, "Well, Centerpiece. That's just one of the tunes that we played. That's the tune that we played when Marian came out. It's a Sweets original, Sweets
Right.
Edison original. I played it with him many times before. Everybody knows it's in the key of A flat.
Uh-huh.
So Marian was just joking. He said, "What key?" And so I said, which means 4 flats,
Yeah.
key of A flat.
Yeah.
So we were just joking back and
Right.
forth and having some fun.
Right, I like that. What do you do for 4 sharps, though?
Let me see, what key is 4 sharps? 4 sharps, I don't know.
It's-
Maybe.
Be the key of, yeah, right. Okay. For 4 sharps, I'd go, no, thank you.
That'd be the key of E.
Key of E, yeah.
Yeah.
Unlikely you'd probably be playing in the key of the E with a horn player.
No, we don't delve too deeply into the sharp keys.
Right.
Most of the jazz tunes are in flat keys.
Yeah. I just think that's so interesting to be on the stage, at Town Hall, and the way jazz musicians work, you just go like this, and then, can you imagine a Pavarotti coming out and going to his accompanist,
4 flats. Yeah.
Jazz certainly has its own language, and it's marvelous to see the veterans working together. That
Yeah.
that they've all done it so many times that they can be in a New York venue like that and pull it off.
Yeah.
It's great. I know you've traveled overseas quite a bit.
Yes.
Japanese in particular seem to really enjoy jazz. Go over there once a year, or?
Well, at least once a year.
Yeah.
Generally, sometimes there have been years when I've gone 3 times within 1 year. But generally, maybe once or twice a year. I do solo tours over there. And in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, there's been a Japanese production over there. called 100 Gold Fingers, and they bring over 10 of us, 10 piano players, on the same show. And it's very successful in Japan,
Yeah.
We don't know how well it would do here in the United States.
Uh-huh.
But the Japanese promoter has been thinking about it, because it's really been successful over there. And then I go over to a festival once in a while, or something like that. But or I go over just to record once in a while. But I've been to Japan many, many times, and it's a good place to go and play jazz. People really love it. And I look forward to going back again.
A friend of yours, Junior Mance, told me to ask you about the Blues Brothers.
Well, within this production, the 100 Gold Fingers, you get to play duets. You play solo piano. Then you play duets with other people. Marian did it once with us.
Mm-hmm.
She went over 1 year. The roster varies. They change it around year to year. But I've been on every one. So every year I've been on every one. Junior has too. So I guess it was inevitable that in the pairing up of the different piano players, like playing duets, Junior and I would end up together at least. So we did it once, and we played the blues, and it was the reception was so great that pretty soon Junior and I sort of found ourselves together most of the time.
Uh-huh.
And we played the blues, and so that's where the Blues Brothers. They started calling us the Blues Brothers,
Yeah.
So that's where.
Is it possible to put into words what is so attractive? I don't know if that's the right word, but the blues just seems to grab people. Have you ever been able to understand why that is?
Not really. I guess it was the first form, blues, and then the jazz. I guess it's definitely one of the more common harmonic structures for jazz tunes.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it goes all the way back to the St. Louis Blues and Bessie Smith, and it was one of it was definitely production of the black culture here in the United States. It's the blues.
Yeah.
And jazz, I guess, the main players of this music were black people, and it's just, it's like the blues is like the music of our people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's infectious. Everybody likes the blues, but nobody wants to have them.
Has jazz been instrumental in helping the racial scene in this country, in your estimation?
To no end. Yeah, to no end. To no end. If they just let everybody listen to the music and have fun, there probably wouldn't be half the problems that we experience now.
Yeah.
And there have been times like when it seemed to be going that way, like back in the 30s and 40s. Everybody went up to Harlem to hear music. Everybody got together at nighttime and hear music. And I don't know what happened in I guess the uprisings and the riots and things, just sort of kind of negated that kind of get-togethers and so forth. And so what may have happened was sort of stopped right in its tracks. But even so, in spite of all these setbacks, I would say that yes, jazz music has been totally instrumental in bringing the races together and everybody really get together and do something together. We go listen to music together.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have time to fight.
Yeah.
We're going to listen to music together. We're going to do something constructive.
Right.
Yeah. So.
What about the scene today? Do you think that there's any Is the music still able to do that today, or is there kind of
Yeah.
two different?
It's still able to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's still, it still does what it can. you
Yeah.
know. I had an occasion. I just came back from Paris a few weeks ago, and I was playing at a club over there in Paris, and in the middle of my concert, an American white woman got up in the audience and said, "You make me proud to be an American." I thought that was very nice. So you see,
Yeah. Gosh, you really reached her, didn't you?
Yeah, it
Yes.
was, it really made me start to think,
Uh-huh.
that was a nice thing for her to say, and it meant something,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They seem to respect the music pretty well overseas, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Has there been an occasion where your music has been affected by anything going on in rock and roll or the popular market? Something that you've really liked, for instance, whether it's using electronics or that you said, yeah, I could use a little of that.
Well, I might not say I can use it, but sometimes when something strikes my ear, you hear it all the time, and once in a while I hear something, coming from another idiom that I like. In the first place, I like music.
Oh.
Period. I like music. There are only two types of music that I really don't really care for. One is Hawaiian, and the other one is country and western.
Yeah.
But there have been times when I've even gotten something out of one of those idioms. I pick it out and hits my ear, and I like it.
Mm-hmm.
But let's face it, music is music. It's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 notes or something like
Yeah.
that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. Only 12 different notes, and it's all made up from these 12 notes. No matter what it is.
Right.
So there has to be some relationship there. Definitely, It has to be.
Guess there's good and bad, right?
Yeah.
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 Did you ever have an occasion to record with electric piano, Fender Rhodes, or?
I think maybe one time I did that. Once. It was never my thing.
Didn't do it for you.
No, never my
Yeah.
thing. No.
You have such a strong attack. I don't know if the instrument could handle it.
Well, there's no similarity in the electric piano and the acoustic piano.
Mm-hmm.
The only similarity I see is the construction of the keyboard.
Yeah,
Other than that, it's an entirely different thing.
different thing.
Your attack is different. Electric is electric, and you can't put too much of your own personality into it. Everybody sounds about the same on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you look back at your career from, your early days in Philadelphia up till now, was there a stretch of years that's been the most difficult because of the market for jazz for you?
Well, each year is different, I guess the leanest years, one of my leanest years was, for me, was like maybe back in the mid-'60s or something like that. There was a time when there just wasn't too much happening. Maybe it's just for me, or it could have been for the rest of the industry, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But there was just, I got through it. As they say, you stick to your guns. I said, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to do anything else. And things brightened up again. And I've had, basically, I have not had too much of a problem throughout my entire career. And I'm happy to say that things right now are better than ever. These are the great years for me, and I'm finally able to do more or less what I really want to do, which is play the piano. Play the piano.
Glad to hear that. Let's just talk a little bit about your most recent recording here. You picked out impressive list of piano players to pay tribute to and interpret their music. And I remember early in the interview you were talking about some people commented on how you they thought you played After Hours better than the original. And I'd have to say that that may be the case for a couple tunes on this record also, that your version of them really is quite outstanding.
Oh,
I
thank you.
really
That's
enjoy it.
nice to hear. Thank you.
I'm not sure I can put this into words, but when I listen to some of the differences from the original recordings and yours, you have a really unique way with a melody, and you seem to put in little pauses in certain places where the original artist may not have done it. Is that something that you think of, or is that just my own?
Well, I haven't been too conscious of that, but
Uh-huh.
I guess to even want to record a song, I have to sort of like feel to a certain extent that even though I didn't write this song, I have to sort of like take over a little bit, and think of it as being a part of my, or maybe, how can I put this? I have to put my own personal stamp on it, even though it's not my tune. But if it catches my ear and I think enough of it, I get to like it enough that I want to make a record of it, then it's going to take on parts of my own personality. I guess this is unconscious.
Yeah. I guess maybe what I'm hearing too is you choose to not sustain some notes in the melody where the original artist did, and gives it a little bit more staccato effect or something.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to play one little section of C-Jam Blues and just ask you about something that happened at kind of the end of one of the choruses here. Now, what I wanted to ask you is, when you got to bar 10 or whatever, and you kind of hung on that one chord there, whatever that chord was,
Yeah.
was that something that was planned, and did the bass player know it was coming, or was
Oh, yeah.
it just one of those kind of things that happened spontaneously?
No, that was planned because, that's an arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he knew it was coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was basically my question, because I'm
Yeah.
always fascinated by when things like that happen. Was it something you had an opportunity to say, okay, when
Yeah.
this part comes,
Oh, he knew that was coming. That's like a piano arrangement.
Yeah.
And,
Oh.
I try to play the piano like it's a big band, and
Yeah,
bring in different sections and brass and so forth, and so,
right.
So more or less played basically the same each time, but it's a piano arrangement. So he definitely knew that was coming.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Worked well. You like to work in solo
And
settings?
that chord was a D flat chord.
Okay, thank you. I could tell it was something that really wanted to resolve itself
Yeah.
eventually, and it works great. Is that the format with this particular trio that you like, either trio or solo context to work in these days?
Yes. And once in a while, just a duo, maybe just piano and bass.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I play in New York about twice a year, and we played like the Sweet Basil Club here towards the end of the year. In the fall, we play there, and then maybe once during the summer. At the Sweet Basil, I use piano, bass, and drums. but then there's another room here that I enjoy playing in, and we do maybe once a year, and it's called the Club Zeno, the Zeno Club. And there, when I go there, I use just the bass fiddle.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the first 5 people you call for bass players?
Well,
Big like that.
these days, Ray Drummond, who was on this recording.
Yes.
I was lucky enough to catch him for this. Ray Drummond, Rufus Reed, Jimmy Rouser. He used to, when he can make it, Jimmy Rouser's still playing. Paul West.
That's a name I don't know,
Yeah.
but I trust he must be pretty good
Yeah.
if he's on your A list.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's about 4.
Uh-huh.
There are more that I can't
Okay.
think of right now.
sure.
If I need a trio, I guess one of the first drummers I would call would be Winard Harper, who
Mhm.
was on this recording also. And I was lucky enough to get two of my first choices.
Uh-huh.
Very happy with the way that the recording turned out, and I also use them. I get them, say, for the Sweet Basil engagement. I call them well in advance to be sure that I can get them or somebody like them.
Right. In a job like that, if you have a week or something at Sweet Basil's, are you able to rehearse with those fellas, or you just work enough together that you can pretty much go in?
Well, we don't work together that much because, like I said,
Oh.
I very seldom. I don't take a trio anywhere.
Oh.
Basically, I go just as a soloist, and I guess so. If I get something like this, we can manage to get together just to become reacquainted and maybe run over some new stuff that I might want to do.
Mhm.
Maybe 1 or 2 rehearsals before the engagement, depending upon the availability of them to make these rehearsals.
Right.
So maybe 1 or 2 times.
It was interesting to hear a completely acoustic version of Joe Zawinul's tune, Birdland.
Oh, Birdland.
Yeah.
This recording came about because of a fellow over there at JVC Records, Larry Hathaway. He called me one day about a year ago. Yeah, I guess about a year ago. He said, "Ray, I want you to make a record for us." I said, "Well," first I said, "I don't know." I said, "I don't think I need another record right now."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Why?" He said, "Well," I said, "Well, lots of my old things are being re-released on CD, and so forth, and I've been recording pretty regularly, for the Japanese label and so forth, and I said, if I don't make any record right now, I think it's fine, I'm okay right now." So he says, no, he was very persistent, and he kept calling. He called me. So finally I said, okay. And then it was his idea to do this tribute to my piano friends.
Uh-huh.
It was his idea. And so he said, "You think of some guys that you might want to do this about, and so I'll have some suggestions too." And so between the two of us, this is the final list that we came up with.
Mm-hmm.
And Birdland, Joe Zawinul, Birdland. Of course, the popularity of the thing is to do the tune that each guy was either wrote or was associated with and made popular, like that. Of course, in the case of Ramsey Lewis, like the In Crowd, that was one of his biggest things, In the case of Birdland, that was Joe Zawinul's really huge, popular tune with the Weather Report.
Right.
So the only one of the problems with that was trying to put it into a trio context, and make it sound, like it was, has got a sound,
Right.
have that effect, and I think we got that.
I think you did too.
Has that turned out to be one of my favorite cuts on
Uh-huh.
the CD.
Yeah. I've heard that tune done in so many ways,
Yeah.
everything from marching bands and now a jazz trio. And I suppose we could say that it's become a standard, and I'm always curious as to try to guess what tunes are being written now or in the last 10, 15 years that will become standards, as most of our standards have come from the 40s and 30s. And are they being written now? New ones?
Well, I don't know. Some of the new things I heard are pretty, I guess they could be. But I listen to some of the new stuff, you know, and it's some of it's like shocking, you know. Harmonically, they've gone really, you know, with the modal things and so forth like that, you know, which I don't really delve into, you know. But some of them I like, and you know, and some I say, well, I don't know, you know. Interesting things that they're doing these days, you know. I don't know how long-lasting they may end up being. I don't know. That just remains to be seen, you know. But we're not going to see too many Take the A Trains or C Jam Blueses. I don't think so.
Can you look at your career and pick out some really fond memories right now, recording sessions or just particular nights where the group of musicians you were playing with was very, just really outstanding? Is that possible with all the playing you've done over the years? Do you think back and say, boy, I'm so glad that one happened?
Well, I've had some outstanding nights, memorable nights as a soloist, and some trio settings too. I think as a soloist, I would say that one of my most memorable nights would be my first time in Europe, ever. And I was called to play the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland. It's my first time ever in Europe, and I was doing it solo. You know? I think that, I'm trying to remember who was on that night. They generally had maybe 3 or 4 different artists on that night. I think Stan Getz's group was playing, and I think Chuck Mangione's group was playing, and me, solo, you know. I mean, I knew these guys, you know, so when they saw me, they said, who's with you? I said, nobody. They said, are you kidding? He said, you going to play? I said, I'm going to play solo. Okay. And I started to play, and after they had played, then it's my turn, you know. And I was, you know, a little nervous, a little apprehensive, you know, at first. But after maybe a half a tune, I realized that the audience was definitely with me. And it turned to be one of the most enjoyable nights of my career.
Wow. You could just feel that kind of electricity.
Yes. And as luck would have it, Atlantic Records was recording that night, and I was an Atlantic artist at the time, and the recording Alone at Montreux came from that, and on the basis of this record, people around the world just liked this record, you know, with the audience and everything, the audience participation and applause and so forth. It was turned out to be a great record for me, and as a result of that, I was able to go on and play many places in the world that I might not have been able to.
Yeah. That was a good night then.
Yep.
One of the things I read about you happened to mention a night, the Newport Jazz Festival in 1957, and they went so far as to make a note of a solo that you played on, let's see, you were with Coleman Hawkins and Roy Eldridge.
Yeah.
I Can't Believe That You're in Love with Me. They mentioned that you really ripped it up on that or something.
Really?
Yeah.
I know. It's been a long time since I've heard that record, you know.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out.
We'll have to go and see what you did on that. Yeah. See if the audience was with you that night, too. Well, this has really been fascinating talking to you, and I'm so glad that we got to hear you last night. You just said that you're not in great need of putting out a new record, but I hope you do soon.
Well, I probably will, because this one, the response to this one has been great.
Uh-huh.
And So I'm pretty sure that I'll be doing something as a follow-up to this.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Probably another trio setting, or,
Most likely in another
Yeah.
trio setting, yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
Where are you off to, I'm sorry if I interrupt you.
Tribute to My Piano Friends, Volume 2.
Yeah. Yeah. You off to anywhere distance soon? You traveling?
No, I'm in the middle of a sort of like late winter, early spring
Uh-huh.
vacation, just being around home.
Yeah.
The thing last night for Marian was that's the first thing I've done in maybe 3 weeks.
Uh-huh.
I'm just sort of just taking it easy. I had a very, very busy winter. I spent almost a month in Germany and 2 weeks in Paris, and I was in Japan in December, and really been moving around. And so sometimes you just have to sit still and just enjoy it, and that's what I'm doing right now. I think my next thing out of the country would probably be, I have some festivals to do this summer in Europe and in Canada. The Ottawa Festival I'm going to do, and I think the Toronto Festival, and there's a possibility of festivals in Wales, JVC festivals in France again, and I'm supposed to go to Italy sometime this year, and a club date in Switzerland and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing in the near future, meaning the next couple of weeks now.
When you have 3 weeks off, are you a practicer?
Not too much, not too much, but I'm a little more than I used to be because I just bought a new piano just before Christmas.
I was going to ask what's your preference in pianos?
I bought a Steinway.
Yeah, all right.
Steinway is my preference.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I'm playing this one pretty good.
Yeah.
But I'm not a diligent practicer, like 3 or 4 hours a day. No, I just sit down and play something. I get up and go, and I'll come
Right.
back to it later. I keep it open, so all I gotta do is sit down and play.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
It's been my pleasure being here with you.
Best of
Thank
luck
you.
with your travels.
Thank you very much.
All right. Appreciate it.